Thank you for attending RCPA QAP's Process Improvement Training. This is the first of 5 process improvement training sessions. These are an introduction only, and we will be introducing some new concepts and tools. Do not be too concerned about the quantity of information supplied, or understanding the tools in detail, as it takes time to develop these skills, and there will be support following on from this session. These are very portable skills that can be used in any organisation. This is the training agenda. First of all, we will be discussing the purpose of the training, the basic elements involved, and the DMAIC process improvement methodology. Many RCPA QAP staff have a technical approach to our business, but we need to start to think more like a business, something that was not required of us when we worked out of hospitals. These are the training objectives. We need to understand the link between this training and the strategic plan. From our Business Excellence Self-Assessment in 2017 and our Business Excellence Evaluation, conducted by external evaluators in 2018, it was determined that RCPA QAP needs to conduct process improvement training for our staff. The areas of the strategic plan this training will impact are: Priority 2, Structure. Effective implementation of key synergies and process improvements to become a more effective organisation that is more responsive to our customers. Priority 6, Costs. Develop staff capability to identify and implement improvement activities. Staff also need to understand the link to business excellence. We need to understand the intent and application of the process improvement training, and that this basic training emphasises where, when, and how to use the skills. So we are introducing RCPA QAP's customised process improvement framework that should provide the training the staff need to meet our strategic needs. We need to recognise the key components of the process improvement methodology, and we need to encourage you to use the training. This is the RCPA QAP challenge. We need to move away from our current task-based perspective or approach to a process-focused perspective or approach. It is called systems thinking or bicycle thinking. This slide has been introduced as it provides a helicopter view of what we will be learning today, and it applies to most businesses. When you look at this slide, you can see that we have our voice of customer identified. And from that, we can establish what the gaps in product and service delivery might currently be. Once we know that, we can translate that into activities or actions in the strategic plan. This then flows down to our business objectives, or what we call our annual operating plan. We also have our business measures or key performance indicators, or KPIs, and they are rolled up into a balanced scorecard, or dashboard, and ensure that we are doing things better, faster, and that we are improving the bottom line. If we are not doing that, then we need to look at our process improvement activities. This starts with identifying the value stream that we need to work on. A value stream is the flow of information or materials required to produce a product or service for a customer. You need to establish what the flow of the process is by process mapping the process and establishing what measures are currently in place. You look at the performance of the process overall, and as you can see from the control chart at the bottom of the graphic, the process is out of control and, as a consequence, there is a large spread between the upper and lower control limits. The next step is to employ a process improvement methodology, and this is the DMAIC process improvement methodology. Define, measure, analyse, improve, and control. And as a result of using this methodology, you should end up with a process that is under control as seen here in the above left-hand side of the graphic. This is what we are aiming to achieve for the company in providing this process improvement training. Before we start, we will look at some definitions and general information. A process is a group of tasks that together produce a result of value to a customer. a set of interrelated resources and activities which transform inputs into outputs. A series of interrelated procedures, forms, and policies that result in a process output. Please note that you can have external and internal customers. So that we are clear regarding the difference between a process and a project is temporary, in that it has a defined beginning and end in time, and therefore defined scope and resources. A project is unique, in that it is not a routine operation, but a specific set of operations designed to accomplish a singular goal. So a project team often includes people who don't usually work together, sometimes from different organisations and across multiple geographies. For example, development of new software systems, building a bridge, expanding sales into a new region. You can have a process improvement project team too, but instead of building software systems, bridges, or developing marketing plans, you are working on a business-critical, a problematic, or high-risk process. At this point, it would not be right if we did not talk about Dr. Edward Deming. Dr. W. Edwards Deming was an American engineer who worked as a statistician in the US, but was best known for his work in Japan after World War II. Many in Japan credit Deming as one of the inspirations for what has become known as the Japanese post-war economic miracle of 1950 to 1960. When Japan rose to become the second largest economy in the world through the influence of the ideas that Deming taught. He was especially influential in the automotive and white goods industries. He was only just beginning to win widespread recognition in the US at the time of his death in 1993. He is often referred to as the father of the modern quality movement or evolution. We are going to use two terms today, which need some explaining. We use lean management principles to learn how to identify waste in order to design faster and more responsive processes. Waste is defined as any use of resources that does not provide value from the customer's perspective. Examples of lean tools are value stream mapping, time value maps, 5S, sort, set in order, shine, standardize, and sustain, and spaghetti diagrams. We use Six Sigma principles to improve customer satisfaction by delivering quality products and services on a consistent basis. In business terms, Six Sigma is a business improvement methodology used to improve profitability, to reduce quality costs, and improve the effectiveness and efficiency of all operations, to meet or even exceed customer expectations. In statistical terms, Six Sigma is a term that refers to 3.4 defects per million opportunities, where sigma is a term used to represent the variation about the process average. In the graphic to the right, you will see what is called a bell curve, representing a normal distribution. If you graph any set of results, they will usually display in this format. The aim in any business is to refine processes so that all of your product meets specification. And if there is a business imperative, you can also narrow the specification limits. In the graph, you can see there is a green curve representing the bad process, where a considerable part of the product or service do not meet the specifications. Therefore, there is a lot of waste. The yellow curve demonstrates a process that is well under control, therefore not much waste. We say that is a Six Sigma process. Lean Six Sigma is a combination of both methodologies. Together, Lean Six Sigma principles help managers fully optimize their businesses and improve their bottom lines. Lean and Six Sigma are natural partners for process improvement. You need both. If anyone ever asks which is better, Lean or Six Sigma, you know that they don't understand either. The key principles of Lean Six Sigma are: focus on the customer. They come first. Identify and understand how the work gets done, the value stream. Manage, improve, and smooth the process flow. Remove non-value-added steps and waste. Manage by fact and reduce variation. It is human nature to want to jump to solutions and quickly make improvements. A lot of people believe that staff should just know how to improve things, but that is not the case. DMAIC is a structured problem-solving methodology widely used in business for long-standing or tricky business problems. It incorporates Lean Six Sigma. Each of these phases lead a team logically from defining a problem through to implementing solutions linked to underlying causes, identifying and reducing waste, and establishing best practices to make sure the solutions stay in place. There are defined activities for each stage of the DMAIC process. Define. What is important to the customer and business? Measure. How well are we doing? Analyze. Use data to determine what needs improvement. Improve. Improve the process. Control. Put plans in place to sustain the gains. This is another view of the framework. It includes some of the tools that can be used throughout each step in the framework. Note that some tools can be used in a number of steps. So, when do we use the DMAIC methodology? Simple problem. Maybe not. Some problems have a simple answer. An experienced person can gather and analyze data to find a solution without going through all the DMAIC steps, but may use some of the tools. Complex problems? Yes. When a problem is complex, in many cases the facts and data are not understood or misunderstood, and the solutions implemented are therefore not correct. You need to get to the root cause of the problem or problems and bring together people with different areas of knowledge or experience. For example, a business-critical process causing problems. High-risk areas. Yes, use it whenever the risks are high because you need this sort of rigor. These steps lead a team logically from defining a problem through to implementing solutions linked to underlying cause and establishing best practices to make sure the solutions stay in place. We will now focus on the first step, the define step. In the define step, we need to have the team agree on scope, goals and process, and financial performance targets for the problem at hand. Tools to use. Process Improvement Charter. Project Charter, Team Charter, Storyboard. Supplier. Inputs, Process, Outputs, Customer. Voice of Customer. Voice of Business. Voice of Regulator. High-level process map. Before you commence a project, you need to have a document such as a charter that contains the following: problem statement, business case and benefits, goal statement, scope or boundaries, timeline, team members. This is what a simple version of a charter might look like. When documenting this, ask yourselves, what will happen if we do not fix this process? What would be the consequences of this? Voice of customer. The voice of the customer is all the needs and expectations your customers have for your products and services. Additionally, through their use of products and services, they provide ongoing feedback and help the company identify new product development opportunities. Voice of business. This represents all the needs and expectations of the business and its stakeholders, including profitability, revenue, growth, and market share. Voice of the business should be used to establish goals and define what success looks like for the business. So they are distinct voices, although they are interlinked. Voice of regulator. A summary of the needs of associated regulators that must be met in order for the business to be sustainable. This is obviously a given. So when looking at voice of customer, you need to know who your customers are. Some important questions you might ask are: who is your customer? What are their requirements? How do you know that? Which requirements have the highest priority for your customer? How do you know that? How do you measure your ability to satisfy your customer requirements? What customer needs can you profitably meet? What are the customer-driven specifications? When thinking about voice of customer, understand that although customers vary, for example, customers for specific disciplines, from different geographic regions, laboratory size, they often have many common needs as well. By performing customer segmentation, you can analyze and determine the discrete difference between groups systematically. You can then work towards satisfying those different needs. There are basic, articulated, and latent customer needs. You understand these through feedback, interviews, observation, focus groups, surveys. Basic needs would be the same for any business. For example, using Contact Us on a website and getting a response to your query. Articulated needs are those where your customer is directly telling you their wants and needs. Latent needs are hidden needs. When hidden needs are addressed by product or service design, customers are both surprised and delighted. RCPA QAP are good at documenting the discipline-related processes and are getting better at understanding our business processes, but we still need to learn how to improve processes. You cannot begin to improve a process until you understand it. You don't learn to process map, you process map to learn. Dr. W. Edwards Deming. Don't be afraid to process map. Start somewhere, and you will find you get better at it as you go along. So let's look at process mapping. It provides a visual fact-based process description as a basis for understanding current problems. Examples of problems: poor flow or bottlenecks, rework loop delays, non-value adding activities. Enables teams to quickly see improvement opportunities and begin to define problem causes. Helps teams see how a process should work. Helps communicate inside and outside the organization. At RCPA QAP, we tend to think that a process is a document, and that is a flawed perspective. You will see on the left-hand side of this image a simple process map. That is how processes are documented. That is, a linear fashion. If we are honest, we know that the process is probably a bit more complicated than that, as depicted in the middle process map. There is actually yet another version as depicted in the end process map, which is how the process probably works, and this is what we must seek to understand. When we are audited against a standard which does not take into account business needs. For example, where there is waste in the process, or even if we need the process at all. Here are some process mapping tips. Identify what really happens in the process, not what you would like to have happen. This is called current state, or as is, process mapping. If you try to make both, you will get yourself confused. Involve all stakeholders to ensure that everyone has a say in what is happening. Do not exclude an activity or step that is not performed by everyone every time. It might not be part of the primary process, but it does happen sometimes. It is important to document that. Do not map by function. So look at the process as a series of steps to achieve an outcome, even when the process covers several functions or departments in the organisation. You must choose the level that you process map at. In the define stage of DMAIC, we want a high-level process map to determine boundaries and scope of work. When you get into the details of your project, you need lower-level maps that depict the details step by step and include rework loops and specific actions and decisions. Too much detail will weigh you down. Too little will mean that the process map is useless for your project. A bit like risk assessments, you can do them at different levels. It is important to understand what we mean when we are talking about cross-functional processes. The processes that RCPA QAP have traditionally focused on are those relating to the functional areas. These are the processes that are shown vertically in this diagram, such as the disciplines or HR or finance, etc. Business processes, the ones the customer sees, are usually the horizontal processes. These are the cross-functional processes that affect the customer the most. If done well, they result in customer satisfaction. We need to be better at these. We also need to choose the right process map. A CIPOC is a tool we would use in the define step in the DMAIC process. For a very brief snapshot of what the process does and who is involved, you can use a CIPOC diagram. A simple explanation of how the process works in 5 to 10 steps is a high-level process map. For a radical process streamlining or reinventing the process, for example in the equality project, you can use a low-level process map. To gain a deep understanding of parts of the process for problem solving, use a low-level process map. To show various activities by department, especially for improved processes or for formal process documentation, you could use a relationship or swim lane process map. For lean implementation, use a value stream map. CIPOC is a very useful tool used to establish project scope and the boundaries of the process to be improved. Firstly, you look at the suppliers and what inputs they provide. You need to identify what processes you need to use for your activity, what the outputs of the process are, and what the customer receives. You can even add a timeline to this to gain a sense of how long your whole process takes. Here is a simple CIPOC for making a cup of coffee. Look at the suppliers for your inputs, for example. Cambrook supply the kettle, and Nestlé the coffee. Then list your process. Record the 5 to 10 steps that are used, paying particular attention to identifying the starting and end points. Here, your starting point is boiling the kettle, and the end point is to combine, stir, and serve the coffee. Your output is the coffee, and your consumer receives the coffee. So let's look at this a bit closer. To get a very good cup of coffee, you need to know precisely what is required. Now we established that the water will be 170 ml, the coffee 50 grams, the milk 30 ml, sugar 20 grams. Your process will take 1 minute from start to end. Your cup of coffee will be 200 ml, and it will be served at 75 to 85 degrees Celsius. This gives us a more specific view of the process to work with. It is a very simple but useful tool. The high-level and relationship process maps are also very useful in different circumstances. Looking at the high-level map on the left, you have your 5 to 10 steps, a very simple flow, the basic process. The one on the right is called a relationship map, and it is looking at the interrelationship between different groups. For example, RCPA QAP board relationship with other groups and individuals. You can see that there are mechanisms for interacting with each other. The dotted lines usually indicate that there is no formal link, but that there are unofficial lines of communication. This is a good example of what a high-level and a low-level process map might look like for the same process. The process involves a patient referral to a clinic, where a patient has blood taken, and the results indicate that another appointment is required. The high-level map has few steps, with more detail provided in the low-level or detailed map. There is information that indicates that the patient is unhappy with the process. The pain points, if you like, with the negative experiences documented as unsmiley faces. Read a few of these comments. We have used swimlane maps in various customer service related projects over the years. It emphasises who does what in a process. You can easily see all the handoffs between the different work groups and the redundancy that exists in the process, especially when there is continual backtracking. The ideal is to have only one handoff for each work function. This is a great tool for communicating potential issues with the process. A lean tool, the value stream map, often uses different symbols. It is a map that captures all key workflows, information, and materials. It includes supplier and customer inputs, and a lot of other information conveyed in symbols, etc. The cracker symbols in yellow shows where there are issues with the process. The value stream map often has a timeline. In lean, takt time, as seen here, is the rate at which a finished product needs to be completed in order to meet customer demand. Takt time may be thought of as a measurable beat time, rate time, or heartbeat of the process. We won't be producing these, but this is what some other businesses are using to improve their processes. Another example of a value stream map. This is a more complicated example and contains all the information you require to understand your process. This includes where waste occurs, as shown in the brown boxes. There are many different types of symbols used in process mapping, depending on the application, but these are the most common. Symbols vary, but an arrow is usually used to connect other symbols and indicate the direction of the process. A step in an activity is a rectangle, and decision pathways are always depicted as a diamond, etc. Now we are going to look at a particular example of a process for a restaurant. Throughout this training, we will be using this example. Your high-level process map starts with planning the menu, establishing your needs, ordering your supplies, and when they arrive, inspecting them. Then you take your customer's order, prepare the food, and in this instance, there are specials and a rework loop where the waiter takes the customer's order for a special menu item, then goes to the kitchen to place the order. However, the special that the customer ordered is no longer available, so the waiter needs to go back to the customer and ask him or her to choose something else. That is called a rework loop. After the food is prepared, it gets delivered to the pass, and from there is served to the customer. A simple process. This slide is about converting voice of customer to critical to customer requirements. Customers often describe their needs in vague terms. We need to transition them from vague terms to precise requirements to improve what we can offer. So we drill down to get this information. The customer wants good food, prompt service, and good value. But what does that really mean? If you ask the customer what good food actually means, they might say it means good quality food. Ask them what prompt service means, and they might say, food served hot, order taken promptly, and don't make me wait for my food. Ask them what good value means, and they might reply that it means don't overcharge me. We drill down some more to establish that good quality means fresh food, ordered daily. For prompt service, we get some specific information about what served hot means, that is 40 degrees Celsius, and that they want their order taken in 15 minutes or less, and the food served to them in 20 minutes. Don't overcharge me means keep prices competitive. These voice of customer requirements must be built into your process improvements by establishing the critical to customer parameters. Remember these as they are a key aspect of any process improvement activity. Congratulations! You have finished learning about the define stage of the process improvement methodology. In the next session, you will learn about the measure stage.